Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're back with the Premier League review of Matchweek 3's fixtures. We've had a hell of a busy weekend. Obviously the transfer deadline day has now passed, so the transfer window is closed. We've had some very interesting fixtures and obviously some big results that's happened at the weekend, which we'll get into. Obviously we'll go through each individual fixture, as you probably know by now with the structure of the video. But there's obviously been lots of interesting results that will impact the Premier League at the top and at the bottom of the table as we get further into the season. So yeah, it's been a very good weekend of football. There's obviously been some heavy VAR controversy as well. We'll touch on obviously which games were affected by that. But what a crazy transfer window, and the crazy end to it as well. It really lived up to it. That deadline day yesterday was incredible, and obviously there was some big deals that have been completed in the final hours, some that were obviously unfortunately missed out on as well. But we will have a dive in and we will go through each fixture for yourself today. I know we're into the international break now, so I just thought I'd still come up with some Premier League content, and like I say, I was unsure whether to do any international content, but we'll see how obviously England and other international teams get on, and I might come at you with one video on that as well. So if you are new to the channel, I've really been appreciating the support I've been getting on it. Please do feel free to hit the subscribe button and the like button. And without further ado, we'll head straight into the first fixture this weekend. So the first fixture this weekend was involving Chelsea and Fulham at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea in Matchweek 2 and Matchweek 3 have been the first fixture. We didn't have a Friday night game this week, but it was the 12:30 on the Saturday, and it was obviously the West London derby. Chelsea were victorious, a 2-0 win over Fulham, and the goals come from João Pedro and a penalty from Enzo Fernandez. So, as I mentioned before, there was some VAR controversy over the weekend. This was one game which I was heavily involved in. It actually ended up in the referee being suspended for the Sunday game against Arsenal and Liverpool because of the VAR intervention and that being deemed to be incorrect. It was the first goal of the game was actually scored by Fulham, and it was scored by a young lad, Josh King. And I thought he's had a very impressive start of the season for Fulham, and I thought he really deserved the goal. It was a very nicely taken goal. I didn't really see too much wrong with what happened before that. VAR stepped in and intervened, and they said that the goal needs to be disallowed because there was a foul on Moises Caicedo, I believe. So the goal was ruled out, and then from there, Chelsea go and score with João Pedro right at the end of the half. Obviously, there was extra time added on because of the VAR stopping the game. So it was the 45th plus 9th minute that João Pedro opened the scoring. And then in the second half, Chelsea were awarded a penalty for a handball. I believe it was Ryan Sessegnon that handled the ball. But again, before that, João Pedro handled the ball in the box. There was a potential foul on a Fulham player, all before the handball occurred. The referee did go and have a look at the monitor at all of the incidents, and he deemed it to be a Chelsea penalty. Marco Silva was visibly unhappy at both decisions not going his way. I thought Fulham played well, and I thought as the game went on, even though they were 2-0 down, they still looked really strong. I've been impressed with Fulham's start of the season, like I say. I think they have done really well, and they managed to pick up 2 points from 2 games up until this point. So they were unbeaten. They'd drawn against Manchester United and against Brighton. So that's two tough oppositions, especially Brighton away from home, to go and get a point there. And obviously I know it was a late goal. Unfortunately, their luck just seemed to run out in this game, and the decisions didn't go their way, and Marco Silva was evidently unhappy. As for Chelsea, it puts them on 7 points from 3 games, so they remain unbeaten. They've won 2 and drawn 1. I think it's been a good start of the season for them. I wouldn't say great, because of the Crystal Palace game. I think that was a bit disappointing. They could be looking at 9 points from 9 if they had just been clinical and converted a chance, maybe created a little bit more chances in that game. But I can understand, obviously, they had the Club World Cup in the summer, and they were always going to be a little bit rusty. And against a good Crystal Palace side who were obviously high in confidence, I can understand why that game seemed a little bit lacklustre. But since then, they kicked on. They beat West Ham 5-1 last week, and they beat Fulham 2-0 this week. So 2 clean sheets from the opening 3 games as well, 7 points. I don't think you can complain at that. I did say after the first week that I didn't know how Chelsea were going to get on this season. And looking ahead to the next 2 fixtures, they were looking a bit difficult against West Ham and Fulham. They obviously rolled over West Ham, and they comfortably beat Fulham as well. Good result for Chelsea. Disappointing for Fulham. I'm sure they'll bounce back. They've got a couple of weeks now to regroup and come back in after the international break. So Fulham made 2 additions on deadline day. They brought in 2 wingers. So they brought in Samuel Chukwueze from AC Milan, and they brought in Kevin, which is a Brazilian winger from Shakhtar Donetsk. So that's great for an addition for attack and for depth. Marco Silva been crying out for signings to come in for Fulham, and they really looked like they had a quiet window and they weren't going to do too much. I don't know if they'd explored a deal to potentially sign Raheem Sterling from Chelsea on loan, or if that was a permanent deal, but that obviously didn't end up materialising. So they have got Kevin and they've got Samuel Chukwueze, 2 fantastic signings in my opinion. Obviously a little bit of money spent on Kevin. Samuel Chukwueze is a loan deal. So we'll see how they get integrated after obviously at the international break, and obviously how Fulham can continue their good start of the season. I'd still say it's a good start of the season despite that result. And obviously the fact that it's a derby game, nobody wants to lose a derby game. Obviously high pressure, high stakes, so bragging rights as well. So yeah, that'll be disappointing for Fulham, but a good result for Chelsea nonetheless. So the first of the 3 o'clock kickoffs that we're going to go through is Manchester United hosting Burnley at Old Trafford. Manchester United did come out as winners, 3-2, thanks to a last-gasp penalty from Bruno Fernandes. The goals for Burnley come from Lyle Foster and Jadon Anthony, and the goals for Manchester United obviously come from Bruno Fernandes, Bryan Mbeumo, and a Josh Cullen own goal. So it was the own goal that opened the scoring for Manchester United. It was a lovely ball in from Bruno Fernandes and a powerful header from Casemiro, which rattled the crossbar, and the resultant deflection ended up going in. So it put Man United 1-0 up. And then it remained that way until half-time. And then Burnley come out really strong in the second half, and they deserved the equaliser through Lyle Foster. It was really good play from Burnley. And obviously I expected them to be on a high from their victory over Sunderland, which was a massive 3 points. It was a big 6-pointer already in the second week. So I did expect them to be on a high and to obviously maintain that level of performance. So to see them get level made the game interesting. And then almost immediately after, just a couple of minutes later, Bryan Mbeumo made it 2-1 to Man United. And you almost got that feeling that Man United were going to hang on and sort of get stronger as the game went on. That Burnley had maybe their 10-15 minutes in the second half, and that was Man United's turn to really get control of the game. And then Jadon Anthony equalised, and it made it really interesting going into the final 25 minutes of the game. It was 2-2, and there was lots of pressure on Manchester United. Obviously, they'd been knocked out by Grimsby in midweek in the Carabao Cup. They were still waiting for their first win after losing to Arsenal and drawing against Fulham. And this felt like a game that Man United should have been winning. I did predict a draw in the preview. And when I seen it was 2-2, obviously it was going into the final minutes, I thought I had it right. I called it right that Burnley were going to be strong. They were going to be confident going into this game, having just beat Sunderland. They were going to take 4 points from their first 3 games, which I think Burnley would have been really, really pleased with. And then last minute, again, controversial decision from VAR. Jadon Anthony commits a foul on Amad Diallo. It starts outside the box and continues into the box. It's a tug of the shirt. The referee gives the penalty in the end, and Bruno Fernandes converts it. It was a big pressure moment for Bruno Fernandes, and he stood strong and obviously kept his composure. He was a player who missed the penalty against Fulham, so to come back and to score a penalty this week was a big moment for him, and it was a big moment for Ruben Amorim to get the 3 points, first win of the season. He didn't seem overly satisfied with the performance. Even after Bryan Mbeumo made it 2-1, right after Burnley had equalised, there was no celebration, and there was no celebration when Bruno Fernandes scored. So it was almost as if it was just something that he was expecting, and he would have been massively disappointed had he not picked up the 3 points in this game. As for Burnley, I think you can 100% take confidence from this game. It just goes to show that all 3 of the promoted teams, and we will get on to the other 2 as well, all 3 of the promoted teams are putting up a big fight this year, and a lot of people were predicting them to be the first 3 to go back down, which is, again, understandable. I said at the start of the season I can understand why everybody's views are that, because that's happened the last 2 years, that the 3 teams come up, the 3 teams go down, and we don't really see a change up in the order in the Premier League. But to be fair to them, this year they are really putting up a fight. and they're putting up good performances. They're picking up points early doors. I believe, obviously, that the two promoted teams, Leeds and Sunderland, won in the first week. I think it took 6 weeks, 6 games into the season last year for a promoted side to pick up a win. Could be wrong on that one again, but I believe I've seen that somewhere. So it's just showing that there's progress there, and there's obviously been a lot of money invested into all of the squads this year, especially obviously like Sunderland and Leeds, who have really invested well, and they're seeing the results of that by getting points early doors, which is exactly what they need to do. Because obviously, as the season comes along, it's going to get harder the deeper you get into it. So to get points early, to get them on the board and start making your way up the table, and not get dragged from day one into that relegation battle, is a big step for the promoted sides this year. So although Burnley lost, it was a last gasp penalty. There's not much you can do about it. Jadon Anthony was a little bit silly to make the challenge, in my opinion. It wasn't necessary. They had players in and around the ball that could have made a challenge without him having to be rash. But unfortunately, that then resulted in Manchester United getting the penalty and getting the win. And yeah, it's a big result for Man United. It's an unfortunate loss for Burnley. I think that's the fairest way to put it. Let's see how Man United kick on now, because they picked up 4 points from 3 games. I thought they played really well against Arsenal. The Fulham performance in the second half was a little bit lacklustre, and again the second half performance against Burnley was a little bit lacklustre. And out of all them games, the one they played the best in against Arsenal, they got no points from it. So I don't know what to take from that. It's a strange season, it looks like, already from the first 3 weeks. But well done to Manchester United for picking up your first win of the season. Okay, and the second 3 o'clock kickoff that we're going to go through is Sunderland hosting Brentford at the Stadium of Light. The second home game of the season for Sunderland. They won their previous game against West Ham 3-0, and they won this game as well against Brentford 2-1. And this one was, again, a very interesting game. VAR had its say on it. There was 2 penalties awarded. One was for Brentford, which was missed. And one was for Sunderland, which was scored by Enzo Lafay. And obviously, Brentford took the lead in the game through Igor Thiago. Brentford had originally scored a goal through Dango Ouattara. Again, he scored on his debut against Aston Villa. He almost scored again today. VAR ruled it out. I believe it was an offside that was ruled out for. So that was chalked off. And then the first goal of the game didn't come until the 77th minute, which was from Igor Thiago for Brentford, their new striker from Club Brugge. I thought Brentford had been the better team up until that point. And then it clicked for Sunderland. The final 10 minutes, they needed to get something from this game, I felt, because Brentford and Sunderland are going to be possibly competing with each other for, who's going to go down, who's going to be at the lower end of the table. Brentford have been a consistent Premier League team for a long time, but they've lost Thomas Frank, they've lost Brian Mbeumo, they've lost Johan Wissa now on deadline day. So there's lots of, they lost the captain, Christian Norgard, can't forget that one as well. They've lost a lot of the core of the team, which does have a big effect on the performances, on the results. They started all right. They got a win against Villa. They did lose Nottingham Forest, and now they lost to Sunderland. So 2 losses, 1 win. I think Brentford fans might be all right with that, or maybe we're expecting something from this game. I think I called it as a draw. Again, it was very close until Wilson Isidore in the 96th minute gives Sunderland the 3 points with a fantastic header down low to Kelleher's right hand side. I thought Kelleher maybe could have done better with the opportunity. Should have maybe made a save, but he didn't, and it went in for Sunderland, and it was a fantastic goal. And obviously, Enzo Lafay scored the penalty for Sunderland as well. And in that final 10 minutes, it really clicked for them. They had lots of chances, a flurry of chances. They converted 2 of them, and it converted itself to 3 points as well for the league season. So that puts them on 6 points from 2 games. And I think Sunderland will be over the moon with that. I think there might be a slight disappointment that they didn't get anything from Burnley, because you could have been looking at 7 or 9 points from the first 3 games and almost a perfect start. It just, against Burnley, like I say, it was a massive 6-pointer, and I think Burnley needed the 3 points. They were desperate, and it looked like, obviously, from the chance they had, they were desperate for the 3 points. Sunderland didn't really create much in that game, so it was a little bit of a disappointment from that. They, again, looked a little bit lacklustre in the first half, didn't really create many chances, but they've actually managed to score 5 goals from, I believe, 8 shots on target this season. So the conversion rate is definitely there for Sunderland. But they do need to, obviously, as the season goes on, they need to be creating more chances. So they've got more opportunities to put them away. So far, 6 points from 3 games. I think Reggie Labrie will be really happy with that. And like I say, they've left it late in this one. It was very close to being shared points. but they got the 3 points. And a disappointing result for Brentford to lose it so late on, especially after going 1-0 up with only less than 15 minutes to go. You're probably thinking Brentford can hang on for this game, but they unfortunately they didn't. And Sunderland, a fantastic result for them and a fantastic start to the season. Like I say, with the promoted sides, a lot of people were tipping Sunderland to go back down. It might not be as simple as that. Again, it's very easy to get dragged into a relegation battle at any point in the season. If you start the season slow, already you're looking up the table and it's a mountain to climb. So for Sunderland to already have that 6 points as a safety net to go into the season, I think it's very good for them, and obviously very pleased to see the promoted teams doing really well. We've covered two of them already. We'll get on to the third one very soon. But yeah, good start for Sunderland. I think Brentford will be disappointed. But yeah, there's not. Unfortunately, again, this is the quality of the Premier League now. Anybody can beat anyone. I think it is a little bit of a damaging result for Brentford. Like I say, again, this one, we could class this one as a 6 point up. We don't know where Brentford's going to be. They're still a bit of an unknown entity this season under Keith Andrews. But yeah, if you would imagine they're going to be down the bottom half of the table along with Sunderland, maybe a couple of other teams, then yeah, this is a bit of a damaging result for them. But credit to Sunderland, play until the last minute, and he got a fantastic win. Okay, and the third of four, there was 4 3 o'clock kickoffs this week. The first time that's happened, obviously, we didn't have the Monday night game, we didn't have the Friday night games. They've added an extra game onto the 3 o'clocks. The third one we're going to go through is Tottenham hosting Bournemouth, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Tottenham had a perfect start to the season going into this game. Bournemouth had just picked up a victory against Wolves at the Vitality Stadium, so there was a lot riding on it. And I predicted Spurs to win, and Bournemouth come out 1-0 winners. So well done to the Cherries, well done to Bournemouth. That's a fantastic result. First goal that Spurs have conceded this season, it come through Evanilson in the 5th minute. So again, we've seen a pattern with Bournemouth last season where they like to start the game fast, and they've done that superbly well here today. It's not today, sorry. They've done that superbly well in this game. Evanilson, like I say, with the goal, a fantastic clinical strike. He'd done really well for Bournemouth last season. It was his first goal this season, so he's doing really well to obviously trying to continue that record on. The goal scoring from Bournemouth, it heavily relies on the likes of Evanilson and Semenyo, although they've got an abundance of attacking creative players in that forward lineup. The likes of Clivert, they did have Dango, who's now gone to Brentford. It's heavily relied on Evanilson and Semenyo to get the goals for the squad. So it was great to see. Yeah, Tottenham was disappointing. They didn't really create many chances at all. If you have a look at the statistics, I mean, they had a lot of the ball, but Bournemouth were turning the ball over and counter-attacking, and they ended up having 20 shots to Tottenham's 6. Tottenham's 5. It was a disappointing result, a disappointing performance by Tottenham standards for what we've seen so far this season, and especially what we've seen last week when they played Manchester City. Tottenham looked really, really comfortable in the transition and allowing the opponent to have a lot of the ball and turn it over quickly, and obviously then create a counter-attack opportunity, maybe 3-on-2, 4-on-3, where they were converting the chances. And it worked against them this week. Bournemouth was the team that was sitting a little bit deeper, allowing Tottenham to have the ball without doing too much with it. And then in the end, Bournemouth, clinical counter-attack, clinical goal, and Evanilson gets his season underway with his first goal this year. So very good 3 points for Bournemouth. That makes a back-to-back wins for them. It hands Spurs their first defeat. So both of these teams are on 6 points from 3 games, and I think they'll be very happy with that return. I still think Spurs will be happy with it. Again, this is a game where I believe they were the favourites to go in and get the 3 points. They would have started the season with 9 points from 3 games, which would have been a fantastic start for Thomas Frank going into the international break. But I think if you had obviously asked Spurs fans at the start of the season, what is the expectation? It probably would have been to qualify for a European competition, whichever European competition that would be, to have a good run in the Champions League, just to have a steady, stable season, because last year was a little bit derailing for them. Besides winning the Europa League, the Premier League season was atrocious, and the performances weren't there, the results weren't there. So to see at the start of the season that those things look to have changed under Thomas Frank, I still think Spurs will be happy. They'll be disappointed with this result, but they'll be happy with the overall start of the season. I think it's the fairest way to put it. But for Bournemouth, and they've had a good record, and I can't remember. I said I felt like this game could be a draw, and I ended up going with the Spurs win because I just couldn't see past that. Bournemouth have had a good record against Spurs in the Premier League recently, especially away from home at Spurs. So it's not a surprise really to see that they've done that. Bournemouth always had this ability in them to turn over the big teams. It's just what they do. So yeah, great result for Bournemouth. I'm really happy that they picked up 6 points from the two games. Obviously after the defeat of Liverpool on the first game, which was probably expected. But yeah, they've really come good in the last couple of games and heading into the international break. I think it's probably come at a wrong time for them because they're just building a little bit of momentum. They probably want the games to come thick and fast, but they'll have 2 weeks off now to regroup and come back stronger when all the players return. Okay, and the final 3 o'clock kickoff of this weekend was Wolverhampton Wanderers hosting Everton at Molineux. And again, I predicted a draw in this one, I believe, and it was an Everton 3-2 win. It was a fantastic performance from Everton. I thought Wolves played all right. Again, Wolves have had a difficult start of the season. They're sitting on 0 points from 3 games. It's not the start that they would have wanted. Obviously, the goals in the game come from Beto to put Everton 1-0 up. Hwang Hee-chan equalised for Wolves. Then Njai put Everton 2-1 up. Dewsbury Hall made it 3-1 after half time. And then Wolves got the second goal back in the game from Rodrigo Gomez, the Portuguese fullback or wing back, obviously as Wolves play in their system. And it just wasn't enough to claw them back into the game. They were without Jorgen Strand Larsen for this game. He was out with an injury. There was rumours of him potentially moving away from Wolves. But as we've found out with the deadline passing, he remains a Wolves player. So I think that's a massive boost for Wolves when they come back from the international break. I'm not quite sure how bad his injury is. I'm hoping he's going to be back for them because they need him in that team to be converting the chances. Although they scored 2 goals without him, we've seen before with Wolves that they do struggle to convert the chances without their main number 9 playing, as with any team, as any team would, you know. So yeah, it'll be a big miss if he is out for a sustained period of time. I'm hoping he's going to be back for them when all the players return for the next fixture. But I thought they gave themselves credit, Wolves. They did try and get back into the game. It's not an embarrassing result. It looked at one point that it could get to that, especially when Everton went 3-1 up. It just looked like it was turning a little bit in Everton's favour, and Wolves were slowly coming off the pace of it. And especially after their first 2 opening games, they got beat 4-0 off Manchester City, and they lost 1-0 away to away to Bournemouth. Sorry, so they were yet to score their first goal of the season, and obviously they did manage to get 2 in the game. I thought for Everton again, Jack Grealish was fantastic. That move seems to be really paying off for him. And I know it's early days and things can still go wrong. He could pick up an injury or anything. But so far, to get 4 assists in the 2 games he's played, I believe, against Brighton and against Wolves, he looks really, really consistent for them and a very creative outlet, linking up with the likes of Dewsbury Hall and Jai, Beto. I think Everton's got a really good team, and they've got loads of depth as well in that squad, which is what they've added this year under David Moyes. They have brought in players to go straight into the starting 11, but they've also brought in that little bit of depth, which you need to go into the Premier League season with, in case you get a hit of injuries, you know. So yeah, I think Everton's done really well, and I think to get 6 points from the first 3 games again for Everton, there's a lot of teams that's picked up a couple of wins and they've lost the odd one. Obviously, Everton's disappointment was against Leeds on the opening game. But again, you can put that down to natural rustiness, players coming back from pre-season, new players being embedded into the squad. There's lots of things that can go wrong in the first game, so it's totally understandable. And again, Leeds were at home. It was their first game after getting promoted. The atmosphere was bouncing. It's not a bad result when you look at how they've responded with the next 2 games, beating Brighton and beating Wolves. That's big. That's big. That's really big. Massive results. Massive 3 points in both of them games. So they're currently sitting in 5th or 6th, I believe, in the table. It's been a really good start. And as I said, I thought Everton would have a good year this season. Under David Moyes, he's had a full pre-season with them. They had a really good pre-season out in America. And yeah, they've started the season excellently. So to take a win, going into the international break again, really good result from them. Obviously, it's an away win. Sorry, their first of the season after they lost to Leeds. So I think Everton have done really well. And like I say, that Jack Grealish, for some reason, the last couple of years at Manchester City, they just didn't work out for him. But that season when they won the treble, he was an integral part of that team. And for them to allow him to go out on loan, it's just bizarre. And like I say, I believe there is a buy option in that. If you have a look over at the TikTok video that I've done on that, I believe the buy option is £50 million. So you know, if he continues at the rate he's going, that looks like an absolute bargain. So yeah, fantastic for Everton. Again, Wolves disappointing. They're going to have to start picking up some points soon because, as we mentioned, the promoted teams are picking up the points and they're moving up the table. And we mentioned how easy it is to get dragged into that relegation battle. Wolves can be in that relegation battle and something that they don't want to be in. So yeah, I was surprised because I like Vitor Pereira. I thought he had a really good end of the season last year when he coming at Wolves. He steered them well away from the relegation zone. So yeah, let's hope that obviously he can come back in and he can start working his wonders again for Wolverhampton Wanderers. Okay, and the 5:30 kickoff on the Saturday was Leeds United hosting Newcastle United at Ellen Road, and this was definitely the most boring game of the weekend, I think. It's a fantastic result for Leeds. It's another disappointing result for Newcastle. But again, I believe I said a draw in this game. I don't think I would have predicted either team to win. I just think it was too tight to call, and it was exactly that. Both teams were almost deadlocked. The defenses were absolutely solid. Newcastle ended up going with a five at the back, so they brought in Botman, Shaw, and Dan Burn into the back three. Then they had Tino and Trippier, Tino Livramento as the wing backs. They went with Bruno Guimaraes and Sandro Tonali in the midfield. Obviously, there was no Joe Linton due to his injury. And again, they still had their striker struggles, so they went with a completely different front three to what we've seen so far this season. They went with Jacob Ramsey on the left hand side, they went with Willa Sula down the middle, and they went with Jacob Murphy on the right hand side. And unfortunately, for one reason or another, it just didn't work for Newcastle. They created a limited amount of chances. I believe the best one fell to Willa Sula, and a scuffed effort was sort of blocked on the line. Leeds also had a couple of chances, but again, their attack wasn't really prolific in the game. As much as I've said that Leeds by far been the best promoted sides so far that I've seen over all the games they watched. They got an impressive win against Everton. They got an impressive draw against Newcastle. And obviously, unfortunately, they lost 5-0 heavily to Arsenal, which can happen to any team in the Premier League. So that's not a slight on Leeds at all. And for the first half an hour of that game, they were holding their own. They had a big chance to go 1-0 up. So yeah, the result doesn't really reflect the performance of Leeds, although in the second half, obviously, Arsenal took advantage and control of the game. So as for this one, where it leaves both Leeds and Newcastle, it leaves Leeds on 4 points from 3 games. Again, a very good return. It puts them second in the rankings of the 3 promoted sides. So Sunderland are on 6 points, Leeds are on 4 points, and Burnley's on 3 points. So I think to be in the middle, yeah, that's totally fine. It's consistent. As for Newcastle, it leaves them with 2 points from the 3 games, which is a very disappointing return because I do believe that if they did have a striker, they could be looking at least 6, maybe 7 to 9 points from the opening 3 games. I thought the performances against Aston Villa and Liverpool were really good. This was by far the worst performance of the 3 from Newcastle. And again, it could be to do with obviously a change of system. That just didn't work. Obviously, the forward line was completely different. They hadn't played together before. So there was obviously things to work out mid-game. And it looked a complete mess, in total honesty, from Newcastle. Everything that they were trying to do just didn't really work. But in fairness to them, they have now signed Walter Marder and Johan Wissa from Brentford. So Walter Marder's coming from Germany as a young lad with a lot of potential. They paid a lot of money for him. And there's obviously a lot of pressure coming in because Alexander Isak has now left to join Liverpool. They've got their man, he's got his move that he wanted to. And in fairness, Newcastle have got the Johan Wissa deal, which they wanted to do. There's a lot of money involved for that one. But I think in sort of desperate times, they sort of had to make a move for that. I think if it had been in the round of Wissa had joined Newcastle before the start of the season and Newcastle had taken, let's just say, 6 points from the first 2 games, I don't think anybody would have been complaining with the fee because you would have a return for it. The questions need to be asked for Newcastle as to why that deal wasn't done before the start of the season. If that's the man they wanted, it they had the money or they knew the money would be coming in, why they didn't make the move. These are the unanswered questions that obviously we won't know the answer to because they didn't end up doing that. But they do get Walter Marder and they do get Wissa in after the international break. They've got a fixture against Wolves, who have picked up 0 points from the opening 3 games we just mentioned before. So that's got to look like a winnable game for Newcastle. They've got to try and take advantage of that. But we'll have to see how that goes on. Obviously, Jorgen Strand Larsen is playing for Wolves, or maybe playing for Wolves. It was a player that was on Newcastle's radar as well. But yeah, great start of the season for Leeds. Disappointing for Newcastle. Ifs, buts, and maybes if they had a striker. That's what's going to be obviously the headlines and everything based on Newcastle at the moment. But they do have two strikers. They've got one Premier League proven. They've got one which is young and up and coming. So let's see how the season develops for them. I do believe obviously they should get better with the additions that they brought in. I thought Jacob Ramsey looked positive as well. The potential with an injury to him as well, because he was brought off at half time for Lewis Miley. So yeah, it's an interesting one for Newcastle. They've made lots of signings, and it's all about gelling them into the squad. But fantastic point for Leeds, and obviously back-to-back clean sheets in the home games for them. They kept clean sheet against Everton, they kept clean sheet against Newcastle, and they're two top Premier League sides, Everton and Newcastle. So yeah, really well done. Congratulations to Leeds for the start of the season. I'm pleased to see the Yorkshire club doing well. Okay, then, and we've got the 2 o'clock kickoffs on the Sunday. The first one is Brighton hosting Manchester City at the Amex Stadium, and Brighton picked up a 2-1 win. Another late goal in this game come from Brian Gruder in the 89th minute to seal the victory. Erling Haaland opened the scoring for Manchester City, and going into half-time, they were 1-0 up. It looked like it could have been a comfortable victory. I did predict Manchester City to win this game. James Milner comes on and scores the penalty in the second half against his former club, and then Brian Gruder with the winner in the 89th minute. And it was a game which was decided by managerial changes, in my opinion. Fabian Hertzler made the decision to go with a quadruple change around about the 60th minute mark. So there was still half an hour of the game left to play. It was still 1-0 to Manchester City. And then 4 changes really influenced the game. And they give Brighton that little bit of an edge, freshness on the pitch, a little bit of dynamism. And it resulted in Brighton scoring 2 goals in the final half an hour of the game and taking 3 points. So that puts them onto 4 points from 3 games. Of course, yeah, it leaves Manchester City with 3 points from 3 games, obviously, after their back-to-back defeats to Spurs and now to Brighton. So a disappointing start of the season with Manchester City, and I thought they would be up there competing for the title. And it's sort of what's happened is Man City had a fantastic result in week 1, and obviously I was bigging them up, giving them plaudits. Chelsea had a poor result in week 1, and they've sort of since then. Chelsea's won the 2 games. They've finished on 7 points from the first 3 games. Manchester City have lost their 2, and they're now on 3 points with 3 games. So it's almost done like a 360 flip, and Chelsea now look like they might be in with a chance at the title race along with the likes of Arsenal and Liverpool. Manchester City have a lot of work to do. They obviously had a lot of struggles last season, and we put that down to obviously potential injuries. They brought a lot of new players in January. It was all about how do they fit into the squad. But it was more the Christmas period, the November, December, where they lost a lot of games by Manchester City standards, and that really affected the season and obviously contributed to them finishing in 3rd place. And they've started the season well with a win against Wolves, and then since then they've really slowed up. They didn't ever look convincing against Brighton after they got the equaliser. The momentum really changed from that point onwards, and Brighton were pushing and trying to get that winner, which eventually they did. I think if Brighton didn't end up getting that winner, it would have been a disappointing start of the season for them, because I think Brighton can have a very good year this season and they can be competing for the European spots. I really like the signings that they've made, and obviously they've sold some crucial players to the squad. But the thing with Brighton is they can always reinvest that money really well, and I think they have done that this season. I like Fabian Hertzler. He's a young manager. He's still learning his trade, but he's done really well with them. He had a 9th place finish, I believe, last season. Maybe 9th or 8th. They were somewhere, either one of them 2 positions. So it was really good for his first season. That's a good return. And this season they've started with 4 points from 3 games. They're looking to build on last season, and I think they totally can do that. But yeah, there is obviously things for Pep Guardiola to ponder. I just don't know what to make of Manchester City. Like I say, I thought they looked really good in the opening game against Wolves. All the new signings, Shirky, Reinders, contributing, coming off the bench, making an impact. And yeah, for one reason or another, I mean, Erling Haaland is consistent as ever. He's managed to get himself 3 goals in 3 games. But yeah, they just can't be relying on Haaland to keep getting the points. There's got to be a team cohesion there, and Pep Guardiola's got to figure something out to get Manchester City back on track. And the other 2 o'clock kickoff was Nottingham Forest hosting West Ham at the City Ground. And I believe my exact words were in the preview, I've never been so certain of a Nottingham Forest win, and how wrong I was. West Ham 3-0 win. It was 0-0 going into half time, and all three of the goals come in the final, 5 or 10 minutes of the game. Jared Bowen made it 1-0 in the 84th minute. Paqueta made it 2-0 with a penalty in the 88th minute, and then Callum Wilson made it 3-0 in the 91st minute. I mean, it just come from complete nowhere. I thought West Ham played well in the game. They were obviously really strong defensively, and then they had a flurry of chances at the end, and they were so clinical in taking them to make it 3-0. And obviously, as for Nottingham Forest, they had real struggles in creating clear-cut chances against them. And even the ones they did have, they didn't really convert. I couldn't see this coming at all. I was so certain that Nottingham Forest were going to take 7 points from the first three games, and West Ham were going to be left on 0 points from their three games. And it was going to be, a tough international break for Graham Potter to ponder over how the season had started. And you can sort of go into that now and you can go, well, I picked up my first win, I picked up my first clean sheet. It's an away win against obviously European opposition. It was a great result and a good performance, I would say, from West Ham. I wouldn't say great again because it didn't really feel like there was going to be a goal in the game. It felt like it was going to fizzle out as a 0-0 draw. And then just the flurry of conversion from West Ham made it 3-0. And I do think the scoreline flatters them a little bit, but it really helps with the goal difference, obviously, after their heavy beating against Chelsea last week. And it really helps with the confidence of the players. Callum Wilson gets his first goal for the club. Paqueta scored the penalty. He was being linked with a move to Aston Villa. And obviously, he kept playing. His celebration made it clear that he was going to be remaining a West Ham player. And Jared Bowen as well. West Ham through and through. He had a little bit of a scuffle, or a little bit of disagreement with a West Ham fan in midweek when they were knocked out the Carabao Cup to Wolves. He got on the score sheet, contributed to West Ham's win. Back on track, captain back on track. So fantastic result for West Ham. It is disappointing for Nottingham Forest. As much as they've had a very good start this season, they picked up 4 points from the first two games. I still think they'll be all right. Obviously, when European football kicks in, it's going to be a heavy schedule for them. It's going to be how do they deal with that. But again, they've got a lot of depth in that team, so I'm sure they'll be totally fine. Okay, and the 4:30 kickoff on the Sunday was the game that everybody wanted to have their eyes on. Everybody wanted a piece of this game to see who was going to come out on top. Liverpool hosting Arsenal at Anfield. Last year's champions. Lots of people tipping Arsenal to be their successors this season. With obviously a lot of good business that they have done. They were without Bukayo Saka for the game, and Arteta went with quite a defensive setup. He started Mikel Merino. There was obviously Odegaard and Eze who were on the bench, who were dynamic flair players. Left them on the bench and obviously wanted to bring them on to try and have an impact on the game. And the eventual result was Liverpool 1, Arsenal 0. Szoboszlai with the goal of the weekend. It was a fantastic free kick. If you've seen the clip of it, the movement on that ball, Raya couldn't get close to it. And it was a goal that was, in my opinion, I believe it took something like that to win the game. Again, two defences that were really, really good, really comfortable in the game. It didn't look like there was going to be a breakthrough, and a little bit of magic from the Hungarian was the difference between the two sides. I think Liverpool can be confident now in regards to their defence because there's been lots of questions around that. And again, I don't know whether it comes down to the fact that Arsenal was struggling to create chances because of the type of system and the setup that he went with. If Odegaard or Eze had been starting, would they have had more chances, or would Liverpool's defence have held up as well? Questions that, unfortunately, again, we don't have the answer to. But they looked good, and they looked, out of all three of the games against Arsenal, who were the best opposition they've played so far, that were Bournemouth and Newcastle, I think they held up really well. They got a clean sheet. So I think the question marks around that can sort of be pushed to the side a little bit until after the international break, and we'll see how they come back. But as for Arsenal, again, their defence looked really good. It looked like they were going to keep Liverpool out. And unfortunately, there's very little that you can do against a free kick like that. It was just superb. So, again, have we learned anything really from this game? I don't know. Liverpool have picked up 9 points from 3 games when they haven't been at their best. So I think you're going to take anything from it. It's that they're only going to get stronger. They made the addition of Alexander Isak to the squad. So you're adding lots of goals already more goals than what they've already got with Mo Salah and Ekitike and Wirtz and Gakpo. There's just an abundance of attacking quality with Liverpool at the moment. They did try and get Mark Guéhi over the line, and unfortunately that fell through on deadline day. Crystal Palace had replacement lined up. I believe it was Igor from Brighton, and that fell through. So therefore, they cut the ties with the Guéhi deal, and they said that he was going to be remaining a Crystal Palace player. And I thought that would be a great addition for Liverpool because it would obviously give them cover in defence. Mark Guéhi's a fantastic defender. He's shown it for Crystal Palace. And obviously, we're going on to the Crystal Palace game, which is the final one of the weekend. And we'll talk a little bit about him as well. So it would have been a great signing for Liverpool. Unfortunately, they didn't get that one over the line. It looks like he's going to be leaving on a free next year anyway. So Liverpool can return to the table. But the problem is with him being on a free, there will be a lot of other European clubs who will probably show an interest in him. And that can complicate the deal for Liverpool if his head is maybe swayed to a different league or a different team in the Premier League. So, and it's anyone's game for Mark Guéhi if he does leave on a free next summer. But as for Liverpool this season, I think they'll be all right. I still think Arsenal will be probably the closest challengers for the title. They look really good again. Just going forward, I think it was the system that Arteta went with. They just didn't have enough in them to try and trouble Liverpool enough. But I do believe that we'll see enough with Arsenal during the season when they get Bukayo Saka back in the squad. If Odegaard or Eze is starting consistently, you've got Gyökeres there as well, who's a clinical finisher. We've seen it so often for Sporting and for Sweden. So I think Arsenal will be good. They'll be all right for the season. They've just got to try and push Liverpool as far as they can and hope that obviously they do end up slipping up and there'll be an opportunity there for Arsenal to take the title. Okay, and the final game was on Sunday night. It was the 7:00 kickoff, and it was between Aston Villa and Crystal Palace at Villa Park. And Aston Villa, who desperately needed a win in this game, they needed something, and unfortunately, it went from bad to worse for them. It was a 3-0 Crystal Palace win. Jean-Philippe Mateta with a penalty, Mark Guéhi with the second goal, and Ismail Assar with the third goal. The penalty was conceded by Marco Bizzo, who was thrown back into the squad for Aston Villa. There was lots of transfer rumours surrounding Emi Martinez, and when Unai Emery was questioned on it, his answer was simple: Marco Bizzo. So that obviously was a statement going into the game, and it was a statement during the game because he committed a foul. It was a silly challenge, one that probably didn't need to be made. I don't know, just from my point of view, I didn't think it was a necessary tackle. I thought Marco Bizzo was fantastic against Newcastle. He kept a clean sheet. He made a lot of crucial saves. And when I seen him starting, I thought, yeah, do you know what? It's deserved. They obviously lost last week when Emi Martinez was brought back into the squad. I don't think it was particularly anything to do with Emi Martinez. It wasn't necessarily his fault, but obviously with lots of noise surrounding him, I thought it was fair to give Marco Bizzo another game, a home game in front of the home crowd. And yeah, unfortunately messed up the mistake, gave away the penalty. Jean-Philippe Mateta scored, and his celebration, he ended up getting booked for it. So that was a big talking point, as well as trademark celebration. And unfortunately, he was getting punished for it. But then we've seen it as it went 1-0 at half time, and the game was just sort of teetering out, and there wasn't much happening between the two sides. And then Mark Guéhi pulled out an absolute wonder straight. I said Szoboszlai's was goal of the weekend, and I still stand by that, but Mark Guéhi's was a very close second. It was a really, really good finish for a centre half. And that's what you get with Mark Guéhi. He's a very technical player. He's good with the ball at his feet. And that's why Crystal Palace value him so much. And obviously why Liverpool really want him, because they see him as an ideal Konate replacement if he's to leave on a free next summer. He is a very capable defender with the ball at his feet. So the quality's there with Mark Guéhi, and we've seen it on Sunday night against Aston Villa. And then Ismail Assar just finished it off for Crystal Palace, the 3-0 win. It was a long throw-in, which was flicked on, and he was there to nod home. And yeah, it looks like Ismail Assar may have picked up a slight injury as well. I think it could be out for about 4 to 8 weeks, depending on the report of that. It looks like it's a muscle injury as well. So he'll obviously miss a couple of weeks for the international break, and then after that, obviously they'll have to assess it. But the big talking point over the weekend with Crystal Palace was the fact that when Mark Guéhi was being linked away to Liverpool, Oliver Glasner apparently stepped in. This was per reports, obviously, heard it on TalkSport, that Oliver Glasner was threatening to step away from the Crystal Palace managerial role if they sold Mark Guéhi without having a replacement lined up. I mean, it just goes to show this transfer window was crazy, and the drama all the way through it, right until the very final second, was always there. And that was even after the transfer window had closed, because Crystal Palace and Liverpool had signed a deal sheet, which is basically a contract. I believe it's like a contract that you can still negotiate the transfer after the transfer window is closed, but there has to be certain documentation signed, and it could only be signed between 5 and 7 p.m. 7 p.m. was obviously the deadline for the transfer window on Monday night. So yeah, the drama delivered. It's happy for Crystal Palace fans to say that Oliver Glasner is still there, because he's a fantastic manager and he's delivering fantastic performances, and also happy for Crystal Palace fans, that was a mouthful, because Mark Gahey is still the captain of Crystal Palace. He's still a Crystal Palace player. So I think Crystal Palace are on for a very good year this season. They've got the Europa Conference League, which they qualified for, and they've started the Premier League season with 5 points from 3 games. So they are off to a flyer, unbeaten still, obviously 1 win, 2 draws. So I'm really happy for Crystal Palace. They've had a fantastic year, winning the FA Cup, win the Community Shield. They're on the longest unbeaten run in the Premier League. And as for Aston Villa, there is lots of question marks around them at the moment. They've managed to pick up 1 point from 3 games, which was the first game of the season against Newcastle. So lots for Unai Emery to think about. They've made a couple of signs. They made Jadon Sancho sign, and they signed Harvey Elliott from Liverpool as well on a loan with an option to buy as well. So there's lots of attacking depth there. They already have quite a solid midfield. The defences had a little bit of question mark around it the last couple of games, especially losing 1-0 to Brentford and losing 3-0 to Crystal Palace. But you would imagine now that Emi Martinez is looking likely to see. I think he's signed a contract extension, so maybe you can get him back in. There's no noise surrounding him. Maybe they'll come back and they'll be comfortable. Really disappointed with Aston Villa so far this season. I expect them to be possibly pushing on for the Champions League, and at the moment that looks unlikely. But as we know, things can change quickly in the Premier League. If you start getting on a chain of wins, get a good lot of results behind you, good set of results behind you, then anything's possible. So yeah, fantastic win for Crystal Palace though. Absolutely a sensational start of the season. So there we have it. That is the Premier League review of the Matchweek 3 fixtures. We are now in the international break, so I won't be putting a preview up this week. Like I say, I might or might not do a video on the England fixtures and results. We'll see how they get on. If they are disappointing, or if the games are not exciting, which they normally aren't, then I'll have to think about that. But yeah, I wanted to get the Premier League content out. Obviously, I said this has gone on for a little bit longer than I would expect, but there was lots to dive into, lots to talk about. Obviously, regarding the results and the transfers and VAR and everything that has to come with football, all the drama, we all love it, and obviously that's why we're all absolutely addicted to when the football season returns. So yeah, thank you very much for tuning in and watching the video today. I really do appreciate all the support I've been getting. If you could hit the like button and leave a comment, I would really appreciate it. And obviously will try and interact if you do fancy leaving a comment, maybe just on your team's results or your team's end of the transfer window. Or you're happy with the business that you've done. Let me know your thoughts on the season so far. I think it's been fantastic. We've seen the promoted sides doing excellently well. We've seen some big teams like Newcastle and Villa struggling down the bottom. So yeah, and we obviously had a cracking clash this weekend with Arsenal and Liverpool. Liverpool come out on top, so they take maximum points from the first 3 games despite not being at their best. So it's a great start of the season. It's going to be really exciting. I can't wait for it to come back after the international break. But until the next video, take care of yourself.